Hi all, and thanks for being here. This is the Tony Tonkin Show, where facts matter because you matter. And today I'm having a look at the Jared Kuschner connection in relation to the peace agreement made with Hamas and Israel. Now, we need to be very skeptical of the fact that Kushner was involved at all. And when one looks at this negotiation and the need to be able to bring the Arabs together to develop a peace plan with Hamas and Israel, makes us wonder whether this was just about peace and the Palestinian people and eventually a Palestinian state, or was it actually about something completely different? I'm positing for you that this was primarily about money. Money that Kushner has made from dealing with the Saudis in the Middle East, and also Trump in terms of his golf courses and other investments that the Trump organization has in the region. This is vitally important to understand this because it isn't about Trump being a nice guy, because one thing we are certain of, and that he isn't, is a psychopathic, narcissistic, basically nobody wanting to be a dictator. And here we have him now being praised for creating this wonderful moment in history. And I'm dubious about the motivations behind all of this, because we must remember that everything Trump does is about a transaction. He's not interested in people. He's not interested in humanitarian reasons for bringing this to an end. So what is it that actually motivates Trump in order to be where he is right now? So I'm going to start by just bringing a bit of PBS news, in fact, in relation to this, to help us to better understand where this actually sits. Now, it's also important to note at this point, for history's sake, that Jared Kushner's father is the ambassador for France and Morocco. He is a felon. He is a barred lawyer. And he is an evil piece of crap, really. But nevertheless, does this flow onto the son? I suspect that to some extent it may. And when I'm going to play a bit too where you hear Jared talking about what all of this means in a moment. And when you listen to Kushner Jr., you've got to wonder, what does this man have that is unique? Because he is the most unmotivational, most insipid individual one could ever imagine. Yet he has this inordinate amount of power in order to make a difference in areas such as the Middle East. The question is, what does he have that enables him to do this, apart from the fact that he happens to be Trump's son-in-law? Let's listen to this guy and you make up your mind.
Instead of replicating the barbarism of the enemy, you chose to be exceptional. You chose to stand for the values that you stand for. And I couldn't be prouder to be a friend of Israel, somebody who supports Israel, and somebody who fights very strongly to see Israel survive, succeed, and to achieve its fullest potential.
As it says at the top here, Israel's genocidal army didn't just bomb civilians indiscriminately, but raped Palestinian prisoners on video and targeted toddlers with sniper fire to the head and testicles. These are facts documented by doctors and human rights orgs, and apparently that's behaviour Kushner admires. And I think that's true. Is a piece of human excrement which and still sounds like a child. And maybe that's simply because at some level that's all he is. So let's have a look at this particular bit, just the beginning of this, just to give us some sort of introduction.
$1 billion investment that former President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kuschner, secured last summer from a fund led by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has raised questions about the ethics of post-White House business dealings. Kushner's private equity firm secured the investment after Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman overruled a host of objections from the sovereign wealth fund's advisors. The New York Times reported some of the group's concerns. The private equity firm was found to be, quote, unsatisfactory in all aspects. The kingdom would be taking on the bulk of the investment and the risk. There was a seemingly excessive asset management fee and public relations risks due to Kushner's involvement. Jeff Bennett explores the close relationship between Kushner, the Trump administration, and the Crown Prince that helped shape the deal.
And I won't bother going into that. It's a really interesting bit by PBS because it does, it's like wondering, does Trump actually care, and Kushner and the like, do they care about ethics? Well, clearly they don't. But I guess what I'm saying is that this has a lot to do with the fact that there are financial interests for all of these dudes. And we must remember one other feature here that I think is really important, and that is that Kushner does not hold a position within government, yet he happens to be a key negotiator. The reason why he's negotiating to settle peace and to get the Arabs in order to force Israel to cease fire is because his investments in this area are at risk. And as you just saw from that PBS piece, the fact that most of that risk, the financial risk, has been created by the Arabs. So they're the ones that are wearing most of this risk. And so it's in their best interest also to end this conflict in the Middle East. And, we've got to admit, the Arabs aren't necessarily any great friends of Israel. But they are concerned about the financial ramifications if this war continues, and particularly if the West turns eventually against them as well. So in this article here, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, was a key player in the Israeli-Hamas peace deal. And there hasn't been much discussion, I don't think, generally in the media around this. After months of stalled talks following the collapse of a ceasefire deal in March, a familiar face was seen sitting alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a first phase peace deal was finalised. And that face was Jared Kushner. The son-in-law of US President Donald Trump was in Jerusalem, accompanied by billionaire Middle East Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, also a billionaire, to present the agreement to Israel's cabinet before it was eventually approved on Thursday evening. In high-stakes negotiations like this, a team of people is required to carry out painstaking work behind the scenes to get both parties to the bargaining table. And according to senior officials requesting to speak on background, while mediators worked to get Israel and Hamas closer to an agreement, Kushner and Witkoff were two key players involved in closing the deal. And goes on to say, Trump announced that Israel and Hamas agreed to face. We get all of that. Trump has since lauded the effort of his negotiating team, blah, blah, blah. This is what he said, Jared's a very smart guy. He did the Abraham Accords, Trump said, when asked why Kushner was joining this round of talks. He's a very smart person, and he knows the region, knows the people, knows lots of players. It wasn't until relatively recent, in fact, that he got to know the Crown Prince. And that relationship apparently has blossomed, particularly since they invested in Jared's company and paid him a commission of some billions of dollars. So the reality is that when it comes to financial negotiations, which at the end of the day, the Gaza ceasefire probably was all about, it is apparent It is downright obvious and apparent that this is not about carrying out a humanitarian agenda. This is about carrying out a financial agenda which is going to enrich Jared Kuschner and his company and his father, and also the Trump organization. Let's be clear. That is what this is really all about. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. Remember, it doesn't cost you anything. In the meantime, just take care.